After witnessing the impossible landscape surrounding Middletown, the scientists return to the laboratory grounds. The entire research staff is waiting outside in the strange red sunlight. About a dozen men stand there in tense silence, their breath visible in the cold air as they wait for Dr. Hubble to confirm what they fear. Johnson, the electrician who first reported the disappearance of the farmland outside town, stands with them anxiously, hoping for some kind of explanation. Hubble looks at the frightened faces around him and suggests that they should all go inside. No one asks the questions that are burning in their minds. Instead, the men follow him into the building with the stiff, awkward movements of people who are so shocked that their thoughts can barely keep up with reality. Keniston starts to follow them, but then he suddenly stops. There is something he must do first. He tells Hubble that he needs to find out whether Carol is safe. Hubble immediately warns him not to tell her what they have discovered yet. The truth would only terrify people before the town is ready to face it. Keniston agrees. He promises that he will not say anything. Then he turns and walks into his office. Inside the small room, the familiar sight of his desk and telephone suddenly feels strange and unreal. The entire world has changed, yet here are ordinary objects that still belong to a life that may no longer exist. For a moment, Keniston simply stands there staring at the telephone. The fear that filled him earlier has now turned into a strange numbness. So many things that once mattered have suddenly become meaningless. All the plans he once had for the future, his career, his work, even his honeymoon with Carol, now feel like fragments from another life that has vanished. Cities like Florida, California, and New York might as well belong to another universe. They are part of a world that may now be millions of years in the past. But one thing still matters. Oh, Carol. And suddenly a terrible thought occurs to him. What if Carol was not in Middletown when the explosion happened? What if she and her aunt had taken a drive into the countryside? If that were true, then Carol might be gone forever. The thought almost stops his heart. Finally, Keniston picks up the telephone and asks the operator to connect him. All around him, the phone exchange is buzzing with activity as frightened citizens across town try to call friends and family. Voices echo faintly through the lines as the operator patiently works to connect everyone. While he waits, Keniston realizes something strange. He almost hopes that Carol will not answer, because if she isn't in Middletown, then she may have escaped whatever terrible future lies ahead. At last, a voice comes through the receiver. Carol. She sounds relieved to hear him, explaining that she has been trying to reach him for some time. She describes the strange flash of light she saw and the violent shaking that followed it. The entire town is talking about it. Keniston reassures her that he is safe and tells her that he still does not know exactly what caused the event. Carol asks if the scientists at the laboratory will be able to find out. Keniston tells her he will try. Without frightening her, he advises her and her aunt to stay inside the house for now. With everyone in town confused and frightened, he warns that people might begin to panic. Carol promises that she will stay home and wait for him. After the call ends, the room suddenly feels empty again. The brief comfort of hearing Carol's voice fades, and the reality of their situation returns. Keniston looks around his office and realizes that it no longer has any meaning. All the work he once did here, all the plans he once made, belong to a world that may never exist again. He wishes desperately that he could run away from the truth, but there is nowhere left to run. Finally, he leaves the office and walks down the corridor to Hubble's room. Inside, the entire laboratory staff has gathered together. Johnson stands apart from the others, struggling to understand the terrifying explanation he has just heard. Some of the scientists are still arguing. Old Bites stubbornly insists that the evidence cannot prove exactly how far into the future they have traveled. But Hubble calmly explains that the movement of the stars and the changes in the constellations make the truth unavoidable. Even if the exact number of years cannot be known, the conclusion is clear. Middletown has been hurled millions of years forward in time. The room falls silent as the men try to absorb the meaning of those words. Then another question arises. What should they tell the people of the town? Hubble explains that the citizens must learn part of the truth soon, because the temperature is already falling and the nights will become dangerously cold, but panic must be avoided at all costs. At that moment, Johnson suddenly steps forward with a desperate question. He explains that his son drove out to a nearby farm earlier that morning. The farm lies 2 miles outside town. Now, Johnson wants to know the one thing that matters to him. Is his boy safe? Hubble gently assures him that he probably has nothing to worry about. The answer is meant to comfort him, though the uncertainty in the room remains. Johnson thanks him and leaves to return to his wife, who has been overcome with fear. A few minutes later, a police siren screams outside the laboratory building. Mayor Bertram Garris has arrived. Keniston watches the mayor enter the room and cannot help feeling uneasy. Garris is a comfortable, well-fed man who enjoys speeches, banquets, and public ceremonies. He is a perfectly ordinary mayor for a perfectly ordinary town, but this situation is far from ordinary. Fortunately, the mayor has brought Police Chief Keimer with him. Keimer is a large, sharp-faced man who has spent years dealing with real problems on the streets. He may not be a scientist, but he is practical and capable. The mayor immediately asks Hubble what has happened. Rumors are already spreading through Middletown, and some people believe an atomic bomb has exploded. Police Chief Keimer adds that if the rumors continue to spread, panic could erupt in the streets. Hubble listens carefully. Then he calmly confirms that the rumors are partly true. A superatomic bomb was indeed detonated above Middletown, but instead of destroying the town, the unimaginable forces involved have produced a far stranger effect. The explosion has torn the town free from its own place in time. Slowly and patiently, Hubble explains the truth. Middletown has been thrown millions of years into the future. The mayor and the police chief struggle to believe the explanation. At first, they reject it completely, but Hubble steadily points to the evidence: the strange red sun, the cold air, the alien landscape surrounding the town, and the total loss of all communication with the outside world. Eventually, the reality begins to sink in. The mayor collapses into a chair, pale and shaken. Finally, he asks the only question that matters now: what are they going to do? Hubble already has the beginning of a plan. First, panic must be prevented. The people of Middletown cannot be allowed to leave the town yet, because if they see the strange future landscape for themselves, fear could spread instantly. So Hubble suggests that the authorities announce that the area outside town has been contaminated by radiation. Police Chief Kamer quickly agrees to set up barricades and officers at every road leading out of town. Meanwhile, the mayor reports that the town's utilities are still working. Electricity, gas, and water are all functioning normally. That is because Middletown's power plant, gas plant, and water tower were all carried forward through time along with the town itself. Hubble explains that these resources must now be carefully rationed. Food, fuel, and electricity will all become precious supplies in the uncertain future. The mayor agrees to begin organizing these emergency measures immediately. But before leaving, he asks one last desperate question: is there any way to contact the rest of the country? Hubble quietly reminds him that the rest of the country now exists millions of years in the past. When the mayor and the police chief finally leave, the scientists are left alone again. The weight of their discovery settles heavily over the room. Krishi suddenly bursts into nervous, pointing out the strange irony of the situation. 50,000 people in Middletown are going about their daily lives, completely unaware that the rest of humanity may have been dead for millions of years. Hubble quickly reminds him that the citizens must not discover the truth yet, not until the scientists learn what kind of world now surrounds them. There is only one way to find out. They must explore the strange future Earth beyond the town. Hubble turns to Keniston and gives him the first assignment of this new and terrifying mission. He tells him to bring a jeep, spare gasoline, warm clothing, and 2 guns, because whatever waits for them outside Middletown may not be friendly.